WWE made a deal with the devil when they signed CM Punk. A lot of people might not agree with that sentiment. However, if you look at the way that things ended for Punk in AEW, as well as the amount of heat that he has with several prominent members of the WWE locker room, like Roman Reigns, like Seth Rollins, etc., it should give Triple H pause and have him ask himself whether or not Punk is worth the reward. Because at the end of the day, Punk is a bit of a liability for WWE, and he really has been for almost every company he's worked with ever since he signed with WWE back in 2006. And that's not to say that CM Punk isn't a massive draw. If you go back and look at AEW and when their business really started to boom, it was when Punk returned. A lot of it, of course, was due to the fact that AEW was a fresh, new company. But when Punk joined AEW, it really changed the game for them. They went from being a secondary alternative brand to WWE to being a legitimate challenger brand. Immediately, you saw live attendance, gates, pay-per-view buys, all skyrocket, all culminating in one of the best professional wrestling pay-per-views of all time, All Out 2021, built largely around CM Punk's return match after 7 years in Chicago, Illinois. This is someone who has had a massive impact on the pro wrestling industry, even outside of WWE. And going back to his time in WWE, if you look at the programs that CM Punk was involved in, this is someone who made the best out of every situation. Whether he was put into a weird angle with the Nexus, whether he was cast as the leader of the straight edge society, whether he was cast as someone who was shaming other wrestlers for being drunks or drug addicts, CM Punk made whatever he did on TV entertaining, and it was largely to do with the fact that this man could talk anyone into the building, and that still remains true today. So Punk has a lot of value for any wrestling company, especially WWE right now as they enter arguably the most profitable era in the company's history. We also need to talk about the potential pitfalls of this relationship. The biggest one being whether or not CM Punk will last in WWE. It's already been reported that Punk has a behavioral clause that could help WWE get out of his contract in the event that he has a backstage incident similar to the ones that happened in AEW when he fought the Elite or he fought Jack Perry. And it's for good reason, because whether or not you like CM Punk, the fact remains this is someone who has shown a track record of not being a guy who handles things that professionally. And once you have that reputation, you're put in a weird position where you have to justify yourself being there if you're Punk. And that's why the promo that he cut when he returned to Raw was so bland in a weird way. It's because he didn't want to come across as rocking the boat initially. He wanted the theme of his WWE return to be, I've changed and I'm home. He didn't want people talking about who he was shooting on, what backstage reference he was making. He wanted them thinking about what's next for CM Punk and how has CM Punk changed. Because the narrative for the longest time has been, this is not someone you want in your locker room. We can go back to the reports of Chris Jericho allegedly calling Punk a locker room cancer after he fought the Elite at All Out 2022. We can go back to reports that Jack Perry had a big problem with Punk because he felt that Punk was telling him what to do in an instance where he didn't want that. We can go back to Punk allegedly banning Ryan Nemeth and AEW head of talent relations Christopher Daniels from the building because he apparently just didn't like their tweets or their attitude or whatever. That stuff is what Punk is trying to get away from, and that's the difficulty of having CM Punk. As much as he wants to try to get away from it, many wrestling fans believe that that's the Punk that we're getting in WWE. And I'm not saying that that's completely true, but if you're WWE, you 100% want to be careful with the way that you use CM Punk. Is this someone you would want to put the World Heavyweight Championship on if he goes into a feud with Seth Rollins? Is this someone that you would want to represent your company in the event of a major backstage incident recurring? That's the big question. And at the end of the day, WWE really needs to ask themselves whether or not they're willing to potentially damage some of the goodwill that they built up both in the locker room and amongst fans. Just look at AEW right now. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Ever since Brawl Out in 2022, that company has not been the same. Everything that they've done since then has seemed to be just crawling back from that moment. Prior to All Out 2022, AEW was arguably the best wrestling company in the world from a product standpoint. They had all the momentum in the world. The perception was that this is the place that everyone wanted to be. So if you're WWE, that's not the future that you want for this partnership with CM Punk. What you want is for Punk to come in, do his job, tell great stories, have great matches, cut awesome promos, and make a whole lot of money in between. I think that Punk is willing to do that. However, if we've learned one thing from CM Punk over the past number of years, it's that anything can happen.